Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear us and see us. Welcome to the last episode of the podcast of 2021.
Ever.
Yeah, for all time. We'll be starting in just a second. Here's hoping for a Christmas miracle. Android 11 release for Duo 1 before the end of this year. Yeah, at this point, that will be a Christmas miracle.
Just do it while we're on the podcast.
Just do it, Microsoft. What's the worst that could happen? It just bricks every Duo that gets it.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sending out the tweet.
Awesome. I'm ready to go when you are.
Tweet is sent. I'm gonna retweet because I'm too lazy.
My phone just buzzed, which means I got a notification.
Android 11 is here.
Oh no, it's Coinbase. Sad days.
Oh,
Just saying, crypto's down again. It's always down.
why am I getting emails? All right. Let's see. I am now recording.
I am now recording as well.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 252 for December 20th, 2021. Hey everyone, Gina Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for our final podcast ever, as Windows is canceled. Everything is canceled. Nah, we'll be back in 2022. But this is the final broadcast of the year, and it won't be a long podcast because it is holiday season time and everybody wants to just, not work, including us. But we do have a few things to talk about, including the Xbox documentary that I haven't watched, but Zach has watched, so he'll tell us about that, why it's interesting and good, and why you should watch it as well. The Oppo Find N / versus Surface Duo 2. So Oppo announced a new foldable device that's kind of making some waves because it does some things differently, and I'll talk about the pros and cons of it and why I think it's actually probably a pretty good idea, and also maybe what they could do with Surface Duo for the next version. Speaking of Microsoft expectations 2022, so that's the big thing, of course, you guys will want to tune into, is what do we actually expect to happen next year? Windows 12? No. But I'll go through that. I'll share some thoughts about the Surface Adaptive Kit. Microsoft sent me one, even though I technically don't need it. I am using it on the Surface Headphones 2 Plus, and you can actually see the little stickers there on the side. If you're wondering why I'm wearing these on the podcast, well, I forgot I had them. I still technically need to review them. I am using the dongle. That's the only difference with the Plus. It has a little dongle, which, truth be told, works very well.
Yeah.
It just means that it's a higher rate connection. So I'm experiencing 0 latency, which is really nice when you're on video calls like we're doing right now, or you're watching YouTube videos where, syncing with Bluetooth, typically you do get that delay and you don't get that here. So figured I'll try using them on the podcast. And then we'll go through the thing of the week, which actually I have a couple things. I don't know if Zach has any, but we'll figure that out. Zach, how you doing on this almost holiday time?
I'm happy because it is almost the holidays and it's time to relax. Because between now and the end of the year, really nothing happens, and I'm happy about that because it's been a busy year in the tech space, and it's just nice to chill out and not have to worry about things. Though, Dan, I did want to ask you, no spoilers, but did you see the new Spider-Man this week?
I have not seen it.
Okay, you should watch it. It's good.
I know, but it requires going outside to movie theaters,
and that's a shame.
My best friend just left for Italy. Godspeed to him.
Oh yeah, jeez.
And so I don't have anyone to go watch it with in the theaters, so I'll have to figure that out because the partner, she won't go. So I could go by myself, which if you never go to a movie by yourself, that's always a weird step. But I got used. Well, as a projectionist, I started doing that, and It's all right. It's not too bad going by yourself. It's kind of like going to a restaurant and sitting by yourself. That's a weird thing to do. But
Yeah.
once you do it a few times, it's not so bad. But I've heard nothing but good things about the new Spider-Man. Yeah, it's gonna be a busy time for. We've got Spider-Man. We got
Matrix.
Book of Boba Fett coming out.
Matrix is Wednesday.
Matrix.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna pre/rewatch all the Matrix stuff. You and I have discussed this endlessly. You and I both fans of the sequels. They're fine. They're good. I like exposition. I like philosophy. They're just fun. Plus, I got to watch Animatrix again because it's been ages since I've seen that. But anywho, let's get to the Xbox here. So, what's this documentary? Why do I keep saying
documentary?
Dude, by the way, I had really bad insomnia last night. So, by looking sound tired, I honestly, it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Documentary.
Well, the documentary, let's begin.
Yes.
So Microsoft has commissioned a documentary about itself, essentially, but specifically the Xbox and the sort of history of Xbox, how it came to be, and its journey through the original Xbox, through the Xbox 360, through the Xbox One, and it sort of ends around there. They do touch on the Series X and Game Pass and Game Cloud a little bit, but for the most part, it's about those three sort of initial generations, and it's fascinating. I sat down and I watched the whole thing basically all the way through. It's about 4 hours in total, so it's a long document. It's split into 6 parts, but so you can it's more digestible. They're 30 to 40 minutes each, but you can sit and binge the whole thing. It's free on YouTube, on the Xbox YouTube channel, and like I said, it goes through the sort of entire life cycle, how it was conceived, how the group of people, the team at Microsoft, who were sort of treated as rebels because they were doing this thing that we've got to remember, back in the late 90s, Microsoft was this sort of, we are the Windows and Office company. We don't do gaming. We don't do they did Microsoft Game Studios and they did Flight Simulator and stuff, but their gaming stuff was much smaller compared to the rest of the business. And this rogue team wanted to build a games console. They saw the PlayStation 2. They saw what Sony was getting into. Sony wanted to sort of eventually position the PlayStation as this entertainment hub for the living room. Microsoft said, Microsoft saw that as, they're basically building a PC. This could knock Windows off its number one spot. This isn't good. We've got to have something to counter it. And what's really funny about that is that if you watch it, the whole idea of TV and entertainment and being the hub for your home has sort of been there since the very beginning in the original Xbox. That's half the reason why it was conceived, because they were worried Sony was going to attempt to do that first. So Microsoft did the Xbox, and that kicked off. And obviously they talk about the game acquisitions with Halo and Forza and all the other stuff. They move on to the 360 and they talk about how that was sort of conceived. They talk about the Red Ring of Death and how the company dealt with that. And, the famous story about how the head of Xbox at the time had to go to Ballmer and basically ask for $1 billion to fix the mess that they created through the Red Ring of Death. And Steve Ballmer said, yep, go ahead, do it. Whatever you need, we'll give it to you. And that basically saved Xbox, really, because Microsoft could have gone either one or two ways with that. They could have ignored the issue and pretended it wasn't a problem, or they could have done what they did and been open and honest and said, listen, we're going to fix all the consoles for free. We realize it's a big problem within the sold consoles we have out there. Most of them will suffer from this issue eventually at some point, unless you're extremely lucky. So they extended the warranties by 2 years, I think, for free. So it was 3 years total warranty. And they said that we will fix the issue for free. And that's what Microsoft did. And I think that honestly probably saved the Xbox brand going into the Xbox One, which of course is where they stumbled and fell with the whole focus on TV. And they sort of talk a bit about that, their reasoning behind why they wanted to sort of go that direction. And, they point out that most of the things they say are entirely correct today and were correct back then as well. The Xbox 360 was really already doing it. Most of the things that the Xbox 360 were doing, the Xbox One was just trying to position as more of a core function, because a lot of this was added retroactively to the Xbox 360 throughout its life cycle. It launched as a game console, but over time it got Netflix, it got streaming apps, Sky in the UK, all these sort of TV broadcasting apps and entertainment services were added as apps onto the Xbox 360 throughout its lifetime, throughout 2010 to 2013. And the Xbox team, or the leaders of the Xbox team, were like, why don't we just make that a core function of the Xbox One? And then they went a bit too far with it. And that's kind of what killed the Xbox One before it even got started. It was their TV focus, plus the whole always online DRM thing that they very poorly communicated, which they do try to explain in the documentary. They tried to sort of explain how it wasn't what most people thought, but then Sony sort of grabbed the misinformation and ran with it with that very short video of how to share a game on PlayStation 4. And it was just a 4-second clip of one guy passing a disc to another guy. Once that was that, it was over at that point. There's no way they could have sort of tried to counter it. They did backtrack on a lot of their initial plans, of course, but I think the damage was done at that point. And then they briefly just talk about how Phil Spencer came in and has slowly been dismantling that vision and sort of refocusing the Xbox on gaming, and how he's now leading that. And Xbox is in a good place again. But yeah, the documentary is absolutely fascinating. Even if you're not really into games or into Xbox, I still think it's worth a watch, because they talk about Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer, all of those sort of leaders back in the 90s and early 2000s, how they were feeling about it, how they were looking at it. Because remember, they weren't really gamers. They were more businessmen and people interested in office and money, and they weren't too sure in the beginning. And it's really fascinating to see how, some of the people talk about the meetings they had with Bill Gates and how he was led to believe the Xbox original would run full Windows, essentially, with a taskbar and stuff. And then they came to him halfway through development and said, hey, by the way, it doesn't actually run full Windows. It runs Windows CE or something like a very lightweight version of Windows that they had built specific. They stripped out all the code and stuff. Funnily enough, one of the guys who's talking about this in the documentary mentions that we needed a lighter version of Windows, and that didn't exist. So we sort of had to take it ourselves, but Windows wouldn't give us access to the source code. So we stole it. And they talk about how they basically, in the night, snuck into the Microsoft server room, wherever that may be, and stole the source code for the Windows kernel back when in the late 90s, and started ripping code out to just make it lighter and faster. And then when they actually demoed that to Bill Gates and turned on the Xbox and it booted in 4 seconds, Bill Gates was suddenly very interested, because at the time Windows PCs didn't boot in 4 seconds. They booted more like 3 to 4 minutes. So he was very interested in how they managed to get that working, and so suddenly the idea was a lot more sensible and he was on board and stuff. So, but yeah, it's absolutely fascinating, and I definitely recommend to watch. Again, it's free on YouTube. Just search Xbox, The Power of Xbox, I think it's called, or The Story of Xbox, and it's on the Xbox channel. You'll see it.
It's funny how Ballmer would take risks on hardware and new ventures and throw money at stuff like that, including Surface, right?
Yeah,
that was him. But, and the intention they knew with Surface was they're going to stumble, they're going to fall a few times, and people have weird memory in hindsight, but like Surface 1 and 2 were just completely panned, and plus Surface RT didn't help. And then that was Windows 8, which had its own problems, but they kind of stuck with it. And then, people bring this up in the chat, and I think it's relevant too, whereas Windows Phone didn't quite get this support. Yeah. I mean, Windows Phone had support, right? They did have to make that choice between continuing Windows Photon, which was Windows Phone 6.5, or go with an all-new approach, which became Windows Phone 7, based off of like Zune and what they learned from Media Center. And they went with the more radical approach, but that had its own problems, including the fact that it was a dead end. Its core was a dead end. They couldn't bring in a lot of the emerging technologies in mobile. But at the same time, Ballmer really did not throw the company's weight behind Windows Phone at no point. First of all, he was like, well, we already have a phone. It's us and BlackBerry. It's our market to lose. Yeah. And famously laughed off iPhone. And then Android came along, and Android basically became what Windows Phone should have been, with this idea of being open source and developed openly. And it was more kind of free to license. Microsoft stuck instead to like, oh no, you're going to get Office and you're going to pay for a license. And they put pretty strict hardware requirements on as well, which I think a lot of us actually liked. Yeah. Remember, you had to have a camera button. You had to have the 3 buttons on front. And a lot of those caused
consumers like that, but I don't know if OEMs particularly enjoyed that aspect of it, right?
I don't think they did, which is why they eventually backed off at that stuff. But it was almost too late at that point. But it still, like Ballmer, in recent interviews has talked about how he missed it with mobile. He's like, we did not take it as seriously. We didn't invest as much as we should. And that was really the future of computing a lot of ways. And they just completely flubbed that. And I've talked about this previously. It's like, I saw that. It's why I got involved with Pocket PC personally. And I think it was 2002, 2003 when I picked up a Dell Axum. I was just like, this is going to be the coolest thing ever. Sure, it's not great right now, but man, 5, 10 years, like we're just
Yeah.
gonna have like little handheld computers that go everywhere with us. I don't know how Microsoft didn't see that. Obviously, people at Microsoft did see that, which is, where that Windows
Yeah.
Phone team came out of.
You know,
But it's a shame.
I think
Yeah,
there's a case that could be made that one of the reasons why when they missed phone back in that sort of era, 2007, 2008 era, is because of Vista. They had a nightmare building
sure,
Vista,
right.
and when it sort of they had to reset it, 2005, then they finally shipped 2006/2007, can't remember. But it shipped to very poor reviews and reputation was damaged, and
Yeah.
it was not a great release for Microsoft. So they had to, all eyes were on Windows to try and fix the Windows desktop release. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't all of Microsoft working on Windows. There's still different teams doing different things. But at the top, I think the concern was at Windows desktop, and so a lot of the resources were being poured into that. And phones missed them. The 2007 was the iPhone. That's when that kicked off. 2008, Android. And 2007, 2008 was when Microsoft was fixing Windows. They were building Windows 7, trying to regain the reputation it had with Windows and doing a Windows 7 release, which did work out for them in the desktop space. But because they were so focused on that, they kind of missed phone. And by the time Windows 7 had launched, the iPhone had been out for, 2 years at that point. And so their response to the iPhone coming in 2010 with the Windows Phone 7 release was a little bit late, and that's got them off on the wrong foot straight away. And it's all Vista's fault. So
It's also a cultural thing. I mean, you mentioned it yourself. The Xbox team wanted a version of Windows, and the Windows team wouldn't give them the code for it.
Yeah.
That's not like an exception. That was the rule at Microsoft. And we knew about this with Windows Phone too. They want to work more closely with the Windows team. And the Windows team was like, no, sorry, we're doing our own thing. And that continued for years. It's only until Satya Nadella started reorganizing the company where, this idea of sort of working more closely. And that still took years, right? Now that Panos Panay is in charge of both Surface and Windows, finally we got one guy who's effectively in charge of both things. And even that is a slower process, but we've already seen some momentum around that. And the idea is that the hardware and software is going to merge closer and closer together, which it probably should have always been. But, if you were in charge of Surface and someone was in charge of Windows and someone was in charge of phone, everybody protected their own little job. First of all, you were the senior person of your division. Why would you want to be subservient? Like, if you're going to work now with Windows, well, all right, who's in charge? You know? And that was Sanofsky at the time. And Sanofsky, you and I both laughed because everyone we talk to today just has nothing but terrible things to say about Sanofsky in terms of being his management style. He was very, very, this is my playground. This is my sandbox. Get out. And I think that, was detrimental long-term to them, especially when it comes back to phone. And, it's a shame that Xbox managed to escape that. And I think maybe because the business model around gaming was different, obviously.
I think the work culture, just everything about it's completely, I think it's a lot more laid back as well, because it's gaming, right? Like that whole industry, whether you're working on a console or a consumer playing games, I think that whole industry just treats itself completely differently from the Windows industry or the Office industry or the other side of Microsoft, which is all focused on productivity software and whatnot, and the hardware stuff as well. I think the Xbox side gets to be its own sort of siloed, different company almost, even though it's under Microsoft. Sorry, I needed to cough there.
You already got Omicron.
I don't know what that was. I just had a dry throat suddenly. But yeah, like I do think that's what that comes down to, just differences in work culture and stuff. But yeah, as you mentioned there, all the different teams were different back then as well. Like I also wonder if that's why now Panos is controlling Surface Windows as well, because a perfect example of this is if the Surface team wanted to build a unique device that Windows doesn't currently support, they'd have to go and talk to the Windows team and say, hey, we kind of want to do this thing. And the Windows team would go, that's great, but are you the only company making that device? Because if you are, it doesn't make sense for us to pour resources into that. Now that, that Panos leads both of those teams, it doesn't really matter. So he can do whatever he likes. He's in charge. Hey, you guys, build for this thing. Do it now. And that kind of gets done now. So that's why that happened. And it's a lot different these days, right? Like if you compare Microsoft to 20 years ago and you compare it to today, completely different companies in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and you brought this up in an editorial recently regarding Surface Duo and Microsoft Launcher. Same kind of thing, where the launcher teams focus on doing their own thing. They have their own metrics. They have their own goals, their own, things they want to accomplish and focus on. And meanwhile they got someone knocking door like, hey, we have this Duo thing. Can you guys well, what do you want? It's like they're being, and I'm probably, exaggerating this, but it's probably just what's like, what do you want? Really? You want us to do that? All right, fine. Here, and they signed 2 people to it, maybe. I don't know. But it doesn't feel like launcher is getting the priority either on Duo. And so I think it's the same kind of thing, right? That you just have these different teams. And it is a little unfair when people are like we'll talk about it shortly. No Android 11 yet on Surface Duo. We know it exists. It's definitely coming. I can assure you. But it's in this weird limbo final approval stage where we don't know if Google's holding it up because they need to approve stuff, or it's AT&T. We don't really know. But a lot of people will be like, "Oh my God, Microsoft, the world's largest software company, can't get Android 11 out." I get that statement. Technically, it's true, but that's not the way it actually works. Microsoft operates as almost these little sub companies within the company itself, and they don't just get a blank check. Oh, we're doing Surface Duo, hire 2,000 engineers to work full time on it. Like, I think that's what people think they would do, because why not? They're a $1 billion, $1 trillion company. Why wouldn't they do that? But they don't. They simply get a fixed budget. They have certain goals. If they reach them, next time around, they can ask for more money, and then they just build up like that. But they don't do what some other companies do, which is throw millions at something and then hope it works. They operate a lot more conservatively, and that bothers people. But they're a publicly traded company that needs to prove profits and not take giant risks when they don't know how it's going to pay off. And so, yeah. I don't know. Speaking of, let's merge, I guess, into Surface Duo and Oppo Find N. So there is no Android 11 update yet. It could still drop any day, but the Magic 8 Ball looking unlikely.
Yeah, it's almost Christmas. The holidays are basically here, and Microsoft loves to take this month off for the most part. And I think if they were planning to ship it now between now and the end of the year, I think that'd be shocking considering how they're usually not working at this point. It could happen because the hold up is it's not that Android 11 for the Surface Duo wasn't done, because it was done, and that's why I've been told that there is a final build. They've been self-hosting it internally for a number of weeks now. They shipped that build off to Google for certifying for the Play Store, because Google, if you want to have the Play Store on your device officially, the builds that are sent to devices have to be verified by Google for security reasons, and then it enables things like Google Play and a certified check in the Play Store and stuff, and a number of other things which I'm not privy to. But that process can take a little while, and because it's December, the holidays are nearing, I think that process is taking longer as well. And Google at some point goes on vacation for the rest of the year as well. They're probably already on vacation at this point, so I technically got lost, right, in the time of the year and stuff, and I don't know if Microsoft were really anticipating that. But yeah, so...
Plus, I mean, not to be too cynical, I imagine, we know Microsoft and Google are kind of working together with the Duo, or at least Google is basically like, sure, you can do it.
Yeah, Microsoft is an Android partner, or whatever you want to call them, an OEM partner.
But I imagine there are some people at Google who are just like, screw Microsoft.
You want to submit this on Christmas? No.
We'll get to it. Go to the bottom of the pile. Yeah. I know that sounds like petty. Maybe that's not true. I'm just saying I wouldn't doubt it, because Google as a company, as an entire company, isn't friendly with Microsoft. There are parts like the Android team is probably like, sure, yeah, okay, come over to us. Yeah, we'll approve some stuff, but I don't think they're going to bend over backwards either for Microsoft. But that's just me being a cynic and not trusting anything Google does, because
they suck.
They've never shown any signs of working. Whereas other companies, even Apple's we'll put iTunes in the Microsoft store. Even Google won't do that. They're no.
Yeah.
Oh, you're allowing browsers now in the store, even though that's what we complained that you wouldn't allow to happen. You finally, no, we're still not going. They're just so kind of petty like that, right? So who knows what's going on with that? But it is still coming. But yeah, it's a shame.
The good news is, if it's not out within the next day or so, it will certainly be out next month.
Right.
So that's something to
And,
look forward to.
and sort of the joke this week was LG managed to update the Wing
Yeah, I
to
know.
Android 11. And
Jeez,
it's
man.
funny because LG doesn't make phones anymore. Like they still managed to get this update out faster than Microsoft. So anywho, Oppo Find N. So this is kind of a cool device. So we've been talking about how 2022 is going to be a real big year for foldables and dual screen type devices, in more ways than one, by the way, but we'll stick to Android at this point. But the Find N is a new device from Oppo, who also bought or merged with OnePlus. They still operate as separate companies, but uh, these companies are always kind of close anyway. They always sort of borrowed designs from each other. But Oppo Find N is a $1,500 foldable Android phone. It's small. It's really small.
Yeah.
When it's closed, it's more akin to the size of an iPhone mini, iPhone 12 mini, or I guess there's a 13. Yeah, there's a 13 mini now too. So it's really tiny, although it's thick. It's also it's like if you took two iPhone minis and stuck them together, right? It's going to be about that size, both in terms of thickness and screen size. So it's much smaller. The big innovation here was they sort of merged the display technology, which is Samsung. It is a Samsung OLED panel, the same that's similar type that's used in the Galaxy Fold. But it's more like how Motorola Razr did it, where it kind of like the hinge flexes a little bit. So the result is there's really no seam that goes down the middle. There's a slight one, and the more you fold it, it'll probably appear, but it is significantly less visible than what Samsung is doing, which is pretty interesting. The aspect ratio is also different. It's more like a square, and it does, in this sense, look like Surface Duo. And it actually, I would say, fits in between. If you put up on the screen like a Galaxy Fold 3 on the left and the Duo on the right, this falls right in between, both in terms of size, aspect, and even just the way it's supposed to be used. The big thing, of course, it has an outside display. And because of this aspect ratio, this was something that always bothered me about the Fold. The Fold is very narrow. It's a very tall device. And it's okay when it's open, but when it's closed and you have that screen on the outside, it's a very narrow screen, and it's not great for typing on. It's better than nothing, but it's not great. This gets rid of it because it's a lot more squarish. So even when it's closed, it truly feels like a normal phone. It also doesn't have like the wedge kind of shape. And when it closes, there's no gap. Like you can actually put a piece of paper in it and it'll just lock onto that. So it's really nice, $1,500. The PPI, pixels per inch, is below that of Surface Duo 2. Surface Duo 2 has much bigger displays on it. It doesn't support pen, of course, but it does have all the latest, and it does do dual screen. So they did their own hack where they swipe down. If you swipe down in the middle from the top, it'll split the screen. The resulting side-by-side app experience, I don't think is as good as Duo, because Duos are basically going to get wide full screen apps. This will still be narrow dual apps, but it works well enough, right? It kind of gives you that experience a little bit. But and even though this is a China-only device, this will never be sold outside of the US. The expectation is that if it does well and everything like that, we could see this later in 2022 coming through OnePlus to more markets, including the United States. Now, why I think the Find N is actually really good. I think in terms of mainstream audiences, consumers, people who like to stream media and want a tablet experience, I think this is probably the right design, the right size, the right design, has all the cameras are pretty good on them. I think on all foldables, the cameras are a step back from what the current gen is. You see that on Samsung's devices. You see it on the Duo. You're going to see it on the Find N. But they're still pretty good cameras. You get, I think, triple of them. But I think for most consumers, this is like the right device and the right design. And so you get a lot of people going, that's what Microsoft should do. I don't subscribe to that. I think, first of all, when it comes to foldables and dual screens, I want to see this variation. So we can all look at it and go like, you know what though? I like Samsung. I like their Fold. I want that device. Or you look at the Duo. So like where the Duo 2 has advantages, it's got glass screens, it supports a pen, and we're seeing more and more inking support coming to it. And it's just better because it's the wider displays make it easier actually to take notes on, where you can't even take notes on the Find N. But I think, for productivity and business enterprise sense, where Microsoft is going with theirs is better. But I get how, I think as a mainstream target device, I think the Find N is a better device. But I don't think one needs to be all. Like, I kind of want to have choice. But what did you think of the Find N?
It's interesting. When I first saw the Find N, it was my first reaction was, whoa, that looks like a Duo. It's just because of the shape and size of it, really. It's much more square like the Duo compared, as Dan mentioned, the Fold, which is very tall and thin. And they sort of prioritize landscape as the default orientation, which really helps with the productivity aspect and multitasking with two apps. Because when you multitask on the Fold, the two apps are very narrowed side by side. On the Oppo Find N, they're still narrower than what they are on the Duo, but they've certainly got a little bit more room to breathe, and it's a little bit more bearable when you are using their multitasking.
Yeah.
Plus the UX involved in actually initiating multitasking, way more simpler on the Find N compared to the Samsung. The Samsung, it's like you've got to swipe out, tap the app, drag it onto the display and place it where you want. On the Find N, you just swipe down and it just splits the screen in half, which I think is a lot more fluid. Of course, it's still not automatic like it is on the Duo. The Duo, you're just running multitasking all the time. You tap one app, you tap the other app, you're doing it side by side. Whereas on the Find N, it's still sort of, you have to initiate that mode, which as long as initiating the mode is easier, than if it's a one-step process to initiate that mode, I think it's acceptable. But on the Galaxy Fold right now, it's still technically a two-step or three-step process, which is why I think there's a big barrier there for the Fold that they need to solve for that. But the shape and side of it immediately made me think, oh, that looks like a Duo. And honestly, it looks to me like the first sort of form factor for a single-screen foldable that could rival the Duo if they did the software right. Because obviously the software around multitasking needs to be perfect for that to sort of rival the Duo. And, for example, if you click on a link on one app and does it open on the other side on the Oppo Find N, for example, it probably doesn't. Whereas on the Fold it does, and on the Duo it does and whatnot. So they need to work out software quirks. But that form factor itself was the first device that really proved to me that a single screen foldable could be a Duo at some point, as long as the software respects the two halves, even though it's a single. Because that's kind of what Android is already doing on the Duo. The Android sees the Duo as one screen anyway, and then they're just building software to half them. They could do that on a single screen foldable, and the Find N is the first device that I've looked at that I've gone, yeah, I could see that. If that was running Duo's version of Android, I would be interested in that. So yeah, I'm very. There's still ways to go for that. It needs to be thinner, in my opinion. It needs to support pen. And it needs to have a much more durable display. They're still plastic / ultra thin glass displays, but as we've seen on the Galaxy Fold and the Flip, those displays can just randomly crack because over use, just time down the crease and stuff, depending on temperature going up and down. Nobody really knows why they do it, but people have woken up in the morning and looked at their phone and they've just got a big crack down the middle because that screen tech is still not mature. It's still early days for that, whereas that's never going to happen on a Galaxy Fold, on a Surface Duo. It's just not going to happen unless you drop it.
our games editor Jez Corden has the Fold 3 and he routinely tells us he's terrified
it's go on.
the screens, because like he says he only puts it in his pocket, he makes sure nothing else is in that pocket with it, because he says like it is very fragile. He's terrified it's going to break or crack. Now, to Samsung's credit, they have a pretty good, I would say, warranty program and exchange, and they've taken steps to fix this when it goes wrong, but it's still something to be concerned about. Whereas, yeah, you're right. We're using Victus glass on the Duo 2. It's like almost, I don't want to say it's almost indestructible, but it's a very different experience. I would prefer glass. I have the Flip 3 here. It's the same thing. It's got the plastic.
Yeah.
It feels soft. It's a very soft experience. And even when you're taking like inking on it, it's going to be a challenge. You can do it. The Fold 3 now does support a pen. But the Fold 3 is like, the pen experience is very different. I have some people tell me they love the S Pen. And the S Pen technology is very good. The problem is the pen itself is tiny. It's a toothpick kind of thing. And writing on the Fold is, especially the Note 20, I had this with the Note 20 Ultra, It was good if you want to quickly draw a diagram. Here's an arrow, circle this. It was great for that. Terrible if you want to actually take notes on. And that's where I think the Duo 2 form factor is still better at. And same thing with reading books and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the Find N is like, it really is that sweet spot, I think, for consumers. And here's that question. So what does Microsoft do for Duo 3? Which, to be fair, we're not expecting one next year. And so that will segue a little bit into possible expectations for 2022. So this may be something towards 2023. But a lot of people are like, oh, they need to add an external display, which is a weird thing to request. I kind of get it, but at the same time, it's like the whole point of the Duo 2 and the Duo is it reverse folds so you can have a single screen.
Yeah, I think the problem with the Duo 2 though is because of that camera bump, it becomes less viable to keep in single screen mode. Because obviously you don't want to put pressure on the other end because it'll bend over time and stuff. On the Duo 1, that was a perfect scenario. Like lots of people actually use the device in single screen mode, put it in their pocket that way, and when they needed a second screen, they just flip it into dual screen mode, and that's how they used it. And funnily enough, that's actually how Microsoft. Well, I don't know if this is how they did it officially, but in one of their sort of very early concept visions for a dual screen phone, they've envisioned it as screens out by default, and they had lots of different software enhancements where, for example, if you were looking at the screen in an app scrolling a web page, you could use the back screen to scroll it so you wouldn't have your fingers in the way of like the screen you're looking at and stuff. Small things like that they were looking at. But yeah, that one of their original visions was essentially a Surface Duo, but by default set the screens out, and then you just folded it that way to use dual screens if you ever needed to do that. Obviously, that never came to be. By default, the sort of shipping function is closed, and then you open the device to use it. But on the Duo 2, that's less of a real like a scenario, I think, because of the camera bump itself. It makes it very thicker than a Galaxy Fold, which is impressive. If they could get that camera bump back down, then maybe the need for an external screen goes away again. But as of right now, I do sort of see where they're coming from in regards to the external display thing. That said, I can never tell what people mean by external display because there's many different kinds of external display. There's like heads-up displays like the Galaxy Flip, which is a small display that provides a bit of information. And then if you actually want to do anything useful, you have to open the device. Or there's the Galaxy Fold method, which is the whole front is a display, and you can do basically everything you can normally do if it was open, but on a smaller screen. And I'm not sure which one I would prefer on the Duo. I think I would just prefer a heads-up because it does. I don't think I want to use it in single screen mode like that on the outside.
Yeah. So first of all, let's talk about the Find N is 5 millimeters thicker, right? So we're talking about like throwing an external display on, like all else is equal. Like it's the same device you have today. Right. It just has this high resolution, full screen display on the outside. Problem solved. But that's not the problem. The problem is you're going to have to make the device substantially thicker for the actual display. And then you're going to have to make the battery substantially bigger to accommodate now having all those displays as well. Presumably. I guess maybe you don't even have to make the battery that much bigger just because you don't be using one display at a time. But it's like there's trade-offs, right, to just adding that display. Plus, now you're going from 2 displays to 3 displays.
Right, yeah.
Well, who pays for that?
Yeah. Right, exactly. So, like, people already say the Duo is too expensive.
Yeah. Now, in terms of the heads-up display, so I have... So I have, here's the Z Flip 3, and it's got the heads-up display, and it's cool because you can put, like, animated GIFs on it. It's neat. I like it. It shows the clock, your battery. You double tap it. It comes on. It's not amazing, though. Like, you still end up having to open the phone a lot of times to do stuff. Yeah, you can quickly check an email or something like that, but not even. Like, you only see part of it. It's sort of like a smartwatch, right? You're only going to get some stuff on here. But it's definitely better than nothing. But, you still got to open the phone. Still requires 2 hands mostly to open this. I know some people whip it. I don't whip it because I'm afraid I'm going to fling it across the room. But yeah, I think, and that's where the glance bar was kind of coming into design.
If they just made the glass bar more useful, I'd be happy. But as it currently stands, it's just not useful because it supports so little on what I actually do on my phone. That's the problem with it. I don't really SMS people. I WhatsApp people or Telegram people, and those messages do not show up in the glance bar. But SMSs do. Useless to me. Like it just needs to support more things.
Yeah. So there are definitely ways that they can improve upon this, but I'm not sure what it is. What do they do with Duo 3? I think they're going to keep the dual screen. Some people say like the only reason they're doing dual screen is
Right.
because foldables are so fragile and hard to produce. I don't think
That's
so.
not true. No.
Because Microsoft, when they were announcing Duo, I talked to them about this, and they researched both, a full screen foldable and a dual screen, and they did apparently internal research with people, and two things. One, people said they preferred working on dual screens versus the foldable. Now, who knows what that foldable looked like, right? So we don't really know.
Yeah.
But people preferred that. And then they also wired them up with electroencephalography, EEG, to measure the effort and the workload that their brain was doing when doing tasks. And they said it was a lower task load with dual screen. So those two things, self-reporting and the neuro stuff, basically said dual screens. And you see this on desktop. There's research with dual displays versus a single display. And people who have dual displays prefer to work like that because things are compartmentalized much easier. So I don't know. I don't like this idea that we need to have uniformity when it comes to this form factor. I think
that's what happened to smartphones, and they got boring.
Yeah. Yeah. The fun thing about tech and about having a market is you have different options for different people. Now, I'll fully concede. I think the Duo's design is more niche.
Yes.
For a different select group of people. I fully concede that. And like I said, I think the Find N is definitely more mainstream. I don't necessarily think Microsoft needs to conform to the Find N necessarily. I think there's room here for different sizes. Like, first of all, I don't know if I'd want something as small as the Find N. I think consumers might want that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I want it when I want to take notes on. I don't want to, something as small as an iPhone mini is pretty small.
Yeah.
In fact, the iPhone mini is so small, a lot of people it's undersold, right? They didn't sell as many as they expected. But I think it's going to be fun to watch these categories, but I don't think there's necessarily has to be a uniform single way to do this stuff.
Yeah, thinking about them adding, if they did add like a full front display on the Duo, it would negate one of the issues that people have with the camera bump, because obviously when you have to use a single screen right now, that camera bump gets in the way. If you were to just put a full screen on the front, you wouldn't have to open it all the way anymore to use single screen mode, and that could allow them to put an even better camera sensor in and actually treat the back like a normal smartphone rather than technically one face when you use it single screen mode, and so that could be an interesting sort of benefit if they go full screen external screen on the front. But yeah, who knows at this point? It's too early to tell what exactly they're going to do with a Duo 3. But
we did see they had the patent for where they split up the camera module system.
Yeah,
one in each half, and then when you bring the two halves together, it forms a complete camera system. Mm-hmm. Like that, maybe that's one way around a camera hump. You just cut the system in half and spread it out a little bit. Now, why haven't they done that yet? Well, presumably the same reason why they don't do a lot of stuff. The technology either isn't ready, doesn't work well, or they can't mass produce it at a price where it's going to be affordable, right? Because it's one thing to make a prototype, and then another to go, okay, let's mass produce that. So, but maybe I would love to see that, because you and I both agree that, I have the Duo 1 here. The Duo 1 feels so thin now and just like different compared to Duo 2, that this form factor is still, the preferred. And that's what comes out to Duo 2. It's like, I would prefer the Duo 1's design, but I prefer the Duo 2's camera.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to have that trade-off for now.
Yeah.
But long term, hopefully they can solve that problem. So.
Yeah, and with that, I think it's probably time to move into what we expect to see from Microsoft next year. You sort of already teased it. We'll start with the Duo.
Yep.
We're not too sure if there will be a Duo next year. So some of this information will be based on stuff we've been hearing. Others will be complete predictions. That's kind of the point of this segment. You can try and guess what's a prediction and what's based on info, because we're not going to tell you. We might in some scenarios. But regarding the Duo specifically, I've heard that there might not be a Duo hardware release next year. Now, this isn't locked in, so this could still change. But 2023 is looking more likely for the next sort of Duo release. There might be a refresh for the Duo 2 with like a slightly updated processor. I don't know. That's not confirmed. Or they might decide to spend 2022 just fixing the software, focusing on the software and then just making sure the software is in a good place for them to return to market with an actual Duo 3 in 2023, whether that be the spring or fall, I don't know. But I think it would be good of them to take 2022 to focus on the software because it really needs it. You know, one of the big story with the Duo is that the hardware's great, the software not great. And I think them taking a year to just focus on the software and making it the best they possibly can would actually benefit the product in the long run. So when they return to market in 2023 with a Surface Duo 3, whatever that product may look like, it will at least be shipping with software that isn't buggy. Because, you know, that's the big story with the Duo. And even the Pixel 6, which just recently launched, the hardware looks great and stuff, but lots of people complaining that the OS is really buggy. Lots of bugs there that Google needs to sort of get through. But Google are very good at pushing out bug fixes quicker than Microsoft. Microsoft has actually been really slow in regards to that. So the Duo's up in the air for 2022. I'm not holding my breath for a hardware release. But, you know, again, this plan has not actually been locked in yet, I don't think. So hopefully we'll have more about that as we move into 2022. But that's regarding the Duo. I guess we can move into Surface. What are we hearing regarding Surface? Well, I think the spring is going to be pretty light for new Surface hardware. Usually we get a minor refresh of stuff in the spring and then big hardware announcements in the fall. And I think that's still the case, except there's just going to be less in the spring this time. So I think the only thing we was expecting in the spring is a Surface Laptop Go, which will, I think, look the same as the current Surface Laptop Go, but with an 11th gen chip inside, and maybe a backlit keyboard. I actually don't know. That's a guess, but the 11th gen chip seems to be accurate and the same sort of design and stuff. That's expected in the spring. No accessories, I don't think. I've not heard any accessories. In the fall, that's when we're expecting some more substantial stuff. Surface Laptop, Surface Pro again, Pro X, which will hopefully have an actual processor upgrade this time in the name of the SQ3, which will likely be based on the Snapdragon 8cx Gen 3. That is a guess, but based on history, I think it would be weird for them to do something that isn't Snapdragon based. Then we're also expecting a Surface Studio 3. So I know this has been on the rumor mill for like 4 years at this point, but I am hearing that Surface Studio 3 is on the schedule for next fall. I don't know what's new with it. I wouldn't even be able to guess what's new with it. But there is apparently a Surface Studio release in the plan for next year, which I think was pushed back. I think that was supposed to come out in 2021 or maybe even 2020. I don't know. So hopefully it has a newer processor in it, because otherwise that's going to be annoying. Is there anything else? I think Surface Earbuds 2 are also in the plan for next year, though those could be delayed. The problem with what I'm telling you here is that because of the chip shortage, a lot of this could be delayed further. In fact, a reason why all of this is sort of in the fall of next year is because of the chip shortage. Much of this was supposed to be spring, but it was pushed back. And that could happen again if the chip shortage doesn't get any better for Microsoft, because, you know, we've talked about this before. The pecking order for Microsoft isn't good. When they ask for chips, Intel goes, yeah, you kind of got to wait for Dell and HP and Lenovo before we can get to you. But hopefully they can get those all out on time. Regarding Windows, obviously we're expecting another major update for Windows in 2022, version 22H2, which will come out in the second half of 2022. I've heard it's supposed to be, air quotes, done in May. That should be a final build. Of course, they will keep working on it throughout the year. And the primary sort of focus for 2022's release is just a continuation of the sort of initial vision for Windows 11, similar to how Threshold 2 version 15.11 worked for Windows 10. It was a continuation of the initial launch version, adding a few final pieces that just didn't make the cut for the initial launch. For Windows 11's release, that includes things like a true system-wide dark mode, which actually applies itself to more than just modern code. It applies itself to legacy code as well. So the run dialog, task manager, file property windows, all of those are expected to get dark mode with next year's release. We've already seen, you know, the weather widget button move to the left of the taskbar and stuff. More sort of tweaks and changes like that are expected as well. Android app support is expected to ship for 22H2 as well. And I'm sure there's a number of other smaller things and platform enhancements that Microsoft hasn't talked about yet, which I know they kind of want to do, though don't have an accurate timeline for. Things like faster Windows updates, state separation, all of that. I don't think most of that will be next year's release, but it's stuff they are working on for future versions of Windows Desktop. So that will be interesting. But yeah, that's kind of the sort of top level rundown of what we're hearing / expecting for 2022. HoloLens 3, I don't know anything about it, but considering how the when did HoloLens 2 come out? 2019? Or did it come out? Yeah, 2019, I think.
Yeah.
Must have been. So we're kind of due, right? I mean, 2016 was HoloLens 1, 2019 was HoloLens 2, 2022 makes sense for HoloLens 3. I know Alex Kipman sort of was interviewed earlier this year where he sort of mentioned that, yeah, we're working on the next gen HoloLens. It's supposed to, we're focusing on 3 areas: field of view, immersive capabilities, and I think the VR AR thing, AR VR, where you can switch between augmented or virtual fully immersed reality, which will be interesting. Will it be a product that's aimed at consumers? I don't think so. I still think this will be an enterprise focused device with a price tag to match. But yeah, that could come out next year, and I think that the timeline would line up for them because it has been a few years now, or a couple of years since HoloLens 2.
And plus, we just reported, was it last week, about the Samsung and Microsoft working on a project related to VR, AR for 2024, which may be the consumer push anyway. So I think Microsoft would continue with a HoloLens 3, like you said, just for enterprise. But it wouldn't be for the consumer space, which I still think is a 2024. I think that's probably, a realistic thing. And you're right about, we're expecting 12th gen Intel mobile processors.
Yeah, and that will likely power the Pro 9 and the Laptop 5 Intel side anyway.
Exactly. You need to continue talking for a few minutes as I have FedEx here.
Okay, that's cool. So yeah, as I mentioned, Intel 12th Gen, that will likely be in the Pro 9 and the Laptop 5. As I already talked about the Pro X, that will be hopefully an SQ3 based on Snapdragon Gen 3, which will hopefully also have a 120Hz display. If it doesn't, I'll be shocked because, the Pro 8 has that, and I assume the Pro 9 will have that as well. We're not expecting a new Go or a Laptop Studio because those only just sort of came out, and although the Pro and the Laptop are getting refreshes 12 months on, the other products usually aren't on a 12-month refresh cycle. They're usually on 18 months or even 2 years in some cases. No Surface Book because that line is dead. we are not expecting any more Surface Books, unfortunately. I know lots of people still like that design, but I do believe that line is dead and has been replaced with the Laptop Studio. So yeah, that is a shame. But yeah, I think really the interesting thing is the Duo, whether or not an actual Duo happens next year. I really am not holding my breath for it because I do think it makes sense for them to focus on next year, just working on the software. It needs it. It really does need it. If they can get, because Android 12 launches when? Early next year? Once Android 12 is out, if they can deliver Android 12L on the Duo 2 and the Duo 1 in a much faster time period than they have with Android 11 on the Duo 1, I think that would be a very easy way for them to sort of fix the reputation they've developed with not being able to deliver software updates to the Duo quick enough. If they can get Android 12L out for the Duo 1 and Duo 2 by the summer or even late spring, that would be great because I think that would solve a lot of people's issues that they've had with Microsoft thus far. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see about that.
Hasn't the studio laptop ruined the naming format of all future studios? I don't see how. In fact, the laptop studio, borrows its philosophy from desktop studio. I don't know. They seem very parallel and complementary.
Yeah, they might call the next one Surface Desktop Studio.
Yeah, just to balance it out.
Yeah.
I don't think these are real problems, by the way, because at the end of the day, Surface is still a boutique brand. And while it does have some, public awareness, it's still not as big as just all PC and stuff like that. So I don't think any of this is a big deal. Hopefully we'll see Android 12L for Duo 2 and hopefully even Duo 1.
I think they'll both get it. I think it'd be a mistake for them not to, because I wouldn't be surprised if their user base is Duo 1 dominant at this point.
Yeah.
Considering how little you could buy it for and how little you can still buy it for, $600, $400 in some cases. I think
a lot of people are buying them for $400 and using them as a secondary device.
Yeah.
Because why not at that price, right? It's easier to take a risk. So, yeah, getting 12L will be interesting. Although, as I mentioned in previous podcasts, 12L is less about the actual operating system, which will be nice. It'll have aesthetic changes and some improvements, but it's more about the idea of formal app support coming to those form factors. That's going to be a big deal. And that's something that'll still take, even after 12L comes out, it'll still take a couple months before companies start updating their apps and actually making use of it. The goal is we want to see those updates right away, maybe in spring. They could even come earlier, but we'll have to kind of wait and see. And then the 12th gen Intel stuff, as I was mentioning before, hopefully they'll be announced at CES. But once they're announced at CES, I don't expect them to ship until spring. March, April, May, maybe going into June for some of them. We are still in the middle of the chip shortage, which will extend through all of 2022. It's expected with each quarter, it'll get better and better, but it's still not a walk in the park. So 12th gen is going to be really interesting to launch because I think we'll probably see a bunch of laptops, but they're going to be a very staggered release schedule as they can come out. And then, Microsoft will probably, by the time the fall comes around, those 12th gen chips will be more widely available. And plus, that's Microsoft's typical MO. They sit back a little bit. They don't want to be the launch partner with a new chip, especially, for those who need a refresher. This is not the same as 11th gen. This is a complete new architectural design that's borrowing from the ARM big little type architecture. And we're expecting big things, possibly more cores, better battery performance. And Intel's going to continue probably focus on all the, what I call the little things, the periphery of processors, Thunderbolt 4, bringing LTE, Wi-Fi 6E, instant on, camera support, AI, like all these things that I know sound like buzzwords, but it's really what separates there's a reason why Intel still dominates in prosumer ultrabooks, why AMD doesn't, right? It's still weird. It'd be weird to buy an AMD $2,000 laptop in 2022 that doesn't have Thunderbolt 4, but that's still going to be the case until USB 4 becomes more widely accepted. So that's getting a little off track there, but I think, new Surface laptops will be kind of interesting. So
I also heard that next year will be a big focus on Windows and ARM for Microsoft. I heard whispers that there could be, and I don't know if this actually will happen, but there could be a dev kit of some kind that ships next year at some point, which will obviously be aimed at developers more than, I don't think it'll be a consumer grade product, but it will have a Snapdragon. I think it'll be a flagship Snapdragon chip rather than, because there is already a Windows and ARM dev kit on the market in the form of that 7C thing, which is not very powerful. That's sort of designed to develop for the low end and scale up. Whereas this other dev kit, if it does ship, I don't know if it will, by Microsoft, is a much more higher end sort of kit that will be designed for flagship performance and whatnot. So that will be interesting if that happens. That could be what Qualcomm teased at their summit last week or 2 weeks ago now. They had a moment where Panos Panay was on stage, and when they sort of said bye to him, the presenter on stage was like, and there's more, we have more to talk about at Build next year, sort of hinting that there'll be some announcements there. Perhaps that's what he was referring to, this sort of dev kit thing. But that would be interesting, because that would also sort of signify and seal the deal that Microsoft is invested with Windows and ARM. This isn't just a fad that will go away. They're doing it, and here's a dev kit, enjoy that, build apps please, because we need you to.
It's definitely a piece by piece thing, but we've talked about this previously, that according to Rich Woods over at XDA, interviewed MediaTek, that there was Qualcomm had basically an exclusivity on ARM for Windows for a set amount of years, and that's coming to an end. In which case, when you see MediaTek and then possibly Samsung and eventually NVIDIA jumping into this, things are going to really heat up, and that's when you're going to really start to get the competition and more. And Windows 11 is going to ramp up with it. App support ramps up, and of course the newer, faster processors, which is really what's needed here. So I'm very excited about that. I want my next gen Pro X big time, obviously.
That'll be a big one for you next year.
Yeah, and for those who need a refresher, the Gen 3 HCX gets between 40% for single core and 80% dual core, I believe, or multi-core performance improvement. So it's going to be a big jump in performance. Not M1.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's funny, right? Because Qualcomm is already sort of saying that, this not this chip, but the next chip will be the good one.
Well, it's not even the good one. I want to make this clear that the Nuvia chips, what Zach's referring to, the team that was ex-Apple engineers who built basically what led to the M1, now works for Qualcomm. That processor is definitely, they say it's going to beat the M1. And I mean where the M1 is going to, like not where it is today, obviously. They're confident they can do that. Why would they not doubt that? They know what the M1 does. They helped build its architecture. They know the secret sauce, which is why Apple's suing them, right? But that chip, I'm pretty positive, is going to be not replacing the 8CX. It's going to be a top tier above the 8CX.
Right. Yeah.
Which means it's going to be used kind of like where the Core i9 is. And it should beat the Core i9, remains to be seen, but that's probably going to be the goal. But this is not going to replace the 8CX. So I don't think we're going to necessarily ever see the Nuvia chip, at least that first gen one, and a device like the Surface Pro X.
Yeah, I think you're
because
right.
the Pro X it's not supposed to be that device. The Pro X is meant to be this light, portable workload device. I think we could see like an actual Surface laptop. That may be the first ARM Surface laptop. I could definitely see that happening with, but I want to make that distinction clear that Nuvia ARM is not replacing the 8CX series. It's going to be a tier above it, and it's going to be, priced accordingly. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. So I think that's all of our sort of expectations / predictions. We might, prediction territory, we might see the Xbox streaming stick, which Microsoft sort of teased was in the works earlier this year. That'd be nice to see. They don't want to sit on that for too long because that industry is sort of moving quite quickly. And, Roku and Amazon sort of have that market. So it'll be interesting to see what Microsoft can do in that space. And then Outlook Monarch, which was this, web version of Outlook, which we've been hearing about for a while. That was supposed to go into preview this year, but it didn't. Yeah. So I don't know what happened to that. But it was on the schedule for next year shipping. So we'll see what happens in that regard, whether or not it's been delayed because they weren't able to get a preview out, or I don't think it's been cancelled because a few people on that project, or not on the project, but sort of aware of that project, seem to think that builds are still progressing. They're still building versions of that every day or whatever, however often they do it. So that project does appear to still be coming along, and I do think it's their goal, right? Because the Windows Mail app and Calendar app not very
terrible.
Good. Yeah, they're not great, and they need to do something to fix that. And I think project.
I say that as a defender of those apps.
Yeah.
I actually liked the mail app for a long time, but it is increasingly failing to render emails that come in for me.
Oh, sometimes I can't even switch tabs. Like, you have the priority tab and the main tab. I'll try and click in it won't work. You have to close it and open it again. It's so annoying.
Yep, 100%. So it used to be an amazing basic email client. Now I find it very, very frustrating. So that new mail app can't come fast enough. It should have been here friggin' 4 months ago. Anywho, let's move on quickly. Microsoft Surface Adaptive Kit. I'm holding it up here in my hands, $15. Jez Corden wrote a really big editorial about this, this is something we saw with Satya Nadella coming on board with Microsoft, or as CEO of Microsoft, I should say, focusing on accessibility as a priority for design and being more inclusive. They did it with Xbox with the adaptive controller, and now they have what are effectively stickers. And I have them on my headphones because I was doing photos for them. But the idea here is so if you're visually impaired, you can put I can show it on the video here if you can maybe see it, but you can kind of see I have these little stickers on the where the headphone jack is a little circle, and where the power button is. Is it the power button? No, or where the USB Type-C plug is. I have a little sticker there, and then I have one on the side. So you can place these stickers basically on anything, and then it just gives you a tactile. This is how it feels, what you're touching and all that. And my headphones just switched off for a sec. But they're kind of cool, and they're really nice. It's a simple project, right? It's not like they required millions of dollars to make this happen, but it's certainly more than what Apple and Google does. And considering how important technology is for our daily lives, including all people, it is, I think, time for companies to get on board and thinking about this stuff. But it's a cool little kit. I do wish some of the instructions were a little bit better. The sticker they have an applier that I don't really know how it works. And they do have a website where it walks through everything, but I think some of it could be a little bit more clear. Or maybe they have a video on it. I'm not really sure. But anyway, kind of cool stuff. I'll have a short article going on up on the site soon with the photos of this and action. And you can see so they have like stickers you can put on your keyboards that gives a tactile feel. You already kind of have this by, was it the F and the J keys on all keyboards has a little nub. So you can basically put these stickers on any of your keys, your arrow keys, the power button, ones that you have trouble finding, and it gives a tactile feel to them. They even have like a pull tag you can put on the back of the Surface kickstand. So the kickstand, you always have to kind of put your nail in there and kind of wedge it open. This is like a pull tab, so you can just pull it open. So for people who have dexterity issues, it helps with them. I think it's nice. It's funny because it's, like I said, it's not a groundbreaking invention, right? But why is Google or Apple, like, what is it? I know Apple, like people love Apple. Like Apple doesn't do really anything with this stuff, right? They just basically said it's wealthy people, those are people who can buy our stuff, and apparently able-bodied people can use our stuff. I think the only thing is the iPhone. You can have a resolution that makes everything, the icons big.
They do have accessibility stuff in software. Yeah, I don't think it's as robust as Windows or even Android, right, but they certainly have accessibility stuff.
Yeah. But I think more companies could definitely do more with this stuff. And I think what Xbox has done with gaming has been huge with this. I think it's really nice because you never know, this could be you one day. Yeah. I always think about that, and so I'm kind of glad Microsoft is laying the groundwork for this stuff. Even when I'm old, which is technically, I guess now, but
when you're older.
Yeah. If I start losing functionality, I'm kind of excited that Microsoft's got my back here. So there's that. All right, I guess we'll wrap it up with thing of the week. I have 2 things of the week. I just want to kind of brag. I almost forgot about this thing. I have the Analog Pocket here. So this was like announced, I think, a year and a half ago. And this company, Analog, they make basically gaming accessories for retro type gaming stuff. And they announced this device. It's effectively a modern Game Boy. That is, it takes cartridges from Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advanced, and then even have adaptive cartridges for other systems. But what makes it interesting is, of course, it has a very high resolution display. Like the original Game Boy, which I had, was like a 140 by 360 resolution or something. That was really ridiculous. This thing is like 10 times that. It actually has a higher PPI than an iPhone does. But what's amazing is the hardware. There's no emulation here. They're using the actual same hardware techniques that all of these systems use for those games. So you're getting a one-to-one reproduction, except now it has stereo high-quality speakers, and the display resolution is ridiculously high, but it's scaled perfectly. So all you're getting is just improved graphics. But they also adjusted it for all those systems. Each one of those, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, Game Boy, all had their own way of doing display technology at the time, including dealing with refresh rates, slow refresh rates. And this thing basically takes care of all of that. You can switch modes and stuff. And there's some very in-depth Digital Foundry did, I think, a 35-minute video. A lot of these go really into depth about the display and why it's so amazing. It's $200 for it, but and you just slide the cartridges in. You just slide into the back, and you just play the game, and it's pretty awesome. And it has a 10-hour battery life. It gets recharges by Type-C, so it's beautiful. You just plug it in. It has a headphone jack. It has a micro SD card slot, which they're going to probably, allow saves. It has a sleep state in it, so you just hit the power button in the middle of your game, and it just basically powers off the device, but it holds it, presumably in RAM. And then when you power back on again, it just resumes where you were versus turning off the device and losing your save. And also, there's a dock you can get, so you can connect it to your TVs, and you can use wireless controllers, so you can play Game Boy or Game Boy Advance games on your TV, which is just wild. They did a really, really nice job. And I was, like I said, I completely forgot I had ordered it until I got a shipping notification. And then that was the same day, basically, all the reviews broke. And the reviews have been through the roof. People were saying, this is the best kind of tech. So if you're into playing older games in Game Boy and stuff like that, this is definitely a thing to get. My partner, I was telling Zach about this. Like, I got a 3080 RTX graphics card, 12th gen Intel, got a couple of Xboxes around the house. She uses a Surface Studio. And she loves playing 1989 Tetris on this thing like nobody's business. Like, she's just totally addicted to it. I just got her, and I want to play it too, Sims Busting Out, because she plays the original Sims game, the original from like the year 2000 on the Surface Studio, which cracks me up every day. I'm like, she just loves it. So she loves all the retro old style games. And I think for a certain type of people, they do just like it. But so I give it a ringing endorsement to Analog Pocket. I think they're on back order now. So if you order now, you'll get it like mid 2022. Good luck with that. Yeah. And then the other news I have, thing of the week, is I'm moving away from Xbox, kind of. If you've heard this podcast before, I haven't gamed on the console in 8 months probably. Because I'll use my desktop PC when I do that. And so I just use the Xbox as TV. So I have YouTube TV on there, I have Netflix, I have Hulu, Amazon, HBO Max. But using Xbox just for that is probably overkill, both in terms of power draw, and it's a slow experience. I didn't post this video, but I went to go watch Disney Plus the other night, and it went into a reset loop with the app. It just would keep launching and crashing, launching, and I couldn't. Like, I had to jump in the middle of it just to like reset the Xbox, and I don't know what happened, but I was just like, you know what, I'm done. So I went and I bought a Chromecast, the new 4K version, which Wirecutter says is the best streaming thing available. I got it for $39, which is super cheap, which, I was considering getting an Apple TV, but I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Apple TV is like $140, and this thing is $39. They do 4K, they both do HDR, they both do Dolby Atmos, Dolby Vision, they do all that stuff. So I connected it up, and I've been actually really happy with it. It has all my services, has all the HBO, Hulu, Netflix, YouTube TV, of course, is built into it. Even has Movies Anywhere. The big thing, of course, is it has the Google Assistant. You hold down the button, you just tell it what you want to watch. So like, I held the button, I was like, Animatrix, and it surfaces Animatrix and then shows you what services it plays on and which one you have. So it's on HBO Max. I just click HBO Max and it jumps right into Animatrix. It's just like, wow. So it's faster. I find the video quality to be a little bit better than the Xbox. Now, I'm sure Xbox Series X probably compares comparatively. Why am I going to spend $500 for something I'm not even gaming on just to watch HBO Max, right? So I know it's Google, and I know people, I was just giving them some crap earlier on, but yeah, their streaming thing is pretty solid, I have to admit. It wasn't perfect. Their setup system didn't recognize my network and just stalled out, basically. So I had to do everything kind of manually, which was a little infuriating. But it does beg that question, right? Like, Microsoft should make this, right? And that's what you alluded to before, talk about predictions about an Xbox stick, right? Like, why can't they just have some sort of similar thing where you can watch Xbox, the movies and TV stuff on it, all their apps, do game streaming, right? So hopefully they do something like that, because I'll probably would then try to give up the Google. Oh, there goes my phone, just went off. I'll give up the Chromecast for what Microsoft does, but I don't have a lot of faith that Microsoft could beat the Chromecast out the gates. I don't know.
No, I think its biggest selling point will be Game Pass integration at launch.
Yeah.
That would be sort of the reason why it exists. And then over time, maybe they build it out. But they've got to be careful, right? The Xbox brand is very delicate. And if gamers catch any sort of whiff that they're trying to do something that is unrelated to gaming, it's going to get shut down. So they got to be careful.
But it would be cool if they do something like that, and I can get all my Xbox apps on it as well. I'd be pretty happy if they can do that. Someone's asking about the Pocket Analog. How do you get the games? So you can actually buy, I forgot the name of it. There's like, you can buy a cartridge and then just put, the files on there if you want. Like that's technically the
Oh,
illegal
wow.
way, but like that exists, and you can put that on. You can put like probably 500 games on it and just have it on there. But also, you just go on eBay. Like I already had a lot of games because I still have my Game Boy games. I had my Tetris, I had my Super Mario Land. But you just go on eBay. I bought Sims, I think, for $7. So you could just buy the games you want. We have Double Dragon coming. By the way, she requested I buy Double Dragon, which I used to have. I don't know where that cartridge is. But I was like, you want me to buy Double Dragon? Like, you're kind of badass. Like, I didn't know you were into that. So, but yeah, so you just buy the games. But there we go. Zach, you got anything for Thing of the Week?
Nothing really that exciting. I will mention that if you noticed it, or maybe you didn't, if you're watching the video podcast, I'm using a new webcam this week.
Oh, yeah.
This is the Microsoft Modern webcam that they announced and released earlier this year. It's a 1080p webcam with HDR. It doesn't have Windows Hello and stuff, but it does have a built-in privacy shutter, so that's pretty nice. But the sort of thing that it's 1080p, so it's not 4K. And I don't know if you standing next to Dan here, you can probably see Dan's camera does look a little bit crisper and stuff. For the price, I think it's $80. I could be wrong on that. I need to double check. But for the price, it's not super expensive. I think it's perfectly fine. It has a nice, I say nice, it is buggy, but the app that comes with it, which allows you to customize its settings and stuff, when it works, is really nice. It's modern. It's a UWP app. And you can change things like brightness, contrast, saturation, sharpness. It has a whole bunch of different sort of white balance presets that you can choose from. There's the ability to turn on and off HDR. There's a retouch option, which is supposed to make the picture brighter and smoother, which I do have on. If I turn it off, you may have noticed a slight difference there. It just sort of darkened things a little bit. If I turn it on, it tries to reduce noise in sort of lighter spots. In darker spots, there's still a bit of noise and stuff. It's got a flicker reduction, and what I really like is it has a built-in option to turn off the webcam microphone so Windows doesn't get confused. That's usually a problem with Windows. If you plug in a webcam, lots of them have mics built in, and Windows goes, you want to use that mic, and you rarely want to use that mic. So it's nice that you can turn it off in the settings so Windows doesn't even see a mic on the webcam, which is pretty cool. It's a very small webcam. It looks really nice. It looks very premium, feels nice. Not that that matters, it's a webcam, but yeah, I think for the price, it's certainly a great choice for video conferencing. I think it's perfect. I wouldn't buy this for streaming purposes or broadcast, like such as this podcast. I'm probably going to go back to my Logitech next week because you just can't beat it. But for video conferencing in Teams or Slack or whatever, for schoolwork, this is more than fine. I think it's plenty bright, clear enough, and it works well.
And how much is it?
I think it's $80. Let me double check that. If it's more than $100, then I don't know if I can recommend it. Modern webcam. Let's see.
I don't think it is.
No, I think it's
about
$80.
I thought it was $79 too.
Yeah, I think it's $79.99. Yeah, what's the US pricing?
Yeah. I was surprised by the quality of it because I wouldn't have known. I would have thought you were just on Brio while you were using it, but I would say the quality is. I don't know. I couldn't tell the difference. So.
Yeah. So
what's funny too is
$70 normally, but right now it's $50. So.
Jeez, that's a steal.
Yeah.
I mean, it just cracks me up because I reviewed the Dell, the 4K, their new webcam, and it has a lot of potential, but I would take your $50 cam over it.
Yeah, it's got a nice
even though
little light as well that surrounds the sensor just to let you know it's on and stuff, so it's very noticeable if someone's hacking into you. But that's why the shutter's there, because it's one of those, it covers it, but it also, I think it kills the feed as well, which is really nice. The other thing, I wanted to mention one more thing. I can't remember what it was. It's one of those. It's a plug and play camera essentially. You don't have to, if you don't want to, go into the settings. You just plug it in and it works. And that's, I think, the biggest selling point for this device. This will be really popular in enterprise and stuff, where they sort of just have to send out to people working from home, and they just plug it into the laptop and it just works. And if you want to go into the settings and customize saturation stuff, you can do that, but it should just work out of the box. And I think that's the biggest selling point for this webcam.
I'm not surprised that their camera quality is so good, but it does lead me to the idea that they should still just do a $200 crazy ass, like high quality webcam with Windows Hello, and just make it the Surface Cam, a Surface Cam. There was that story on The Verge this week. I think it was Oppo, speaking of again, has their new camera that they're working on. It's $300. Mac only right now. We'll get PC support sometime in late 2022, which is weird. It's a camera, but it uses the sensor from like the Pixel 4a, I think. And the Verge spent, I think, they had like probably like 8 photos, 7 of which were of the device, and then they had like one video showing it like what the image looked like. And I didn't think it was that great. Like the writer was like, "Oh, this is better than my DSLR that I was using. I think it was an Olympus or something." I didn't see a $300 camera there, that's for sure. So I don't get what was so great about that. But the $300 price tag is interesting, right? Because it's like they're pushing that boundary up higher, and I think there is a market for that. I think some people will take a $300 cam, but I think Microsoft should do like a $200 cam or even $220, right? Make a premium surface, right? But they should just put all their best camera technology into it and just release something.
Yeah.
Curious if Logitech will do something for 2022.
Would be nice.
4 years.
Yeah, the 4K is old now, right? Yeah.
It's been 4 years, and something happened in that 4 years where cameras became more important. You would think they'd want to capitalize on that. So,
well, they probably looked at their products and went, "Is this already perfect?"
Yeah, I know. What else can we do?
Yeah.
Well, I could see them trying to do 8K or something stupid like that. Oh well, hopefully we'll hear more at CES. Speaking of, just quickly, CES coming up next time you guys hear from us. We post CES. And we are expecting a very big show for laptops and PCs. In fact, I'm already looking at the list. I know what's announced. It's a huge list. Lots of cool stuff. Lots of stuff coming out next year.
It's cool because there's a laptop in there that I'm excited about. That's how it's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. And so make sure you pay attention early January. That's January 4th through the 7th. You'll see a lot of stuff coming out on the 4th, of course. So make sure you bookmark some time around that because there's going to be a ton of announcements, a lot of innovation, and a lot of cool stuff you haven't seen before. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. The CES it's the laptop show again. It's a lot of fun. Poor Android Central and iMore have nothing to do at these shows. Of course, it means I don't get a break, but that's okay. So, anywho. Let's wrap it up. We'll do Q&A with the audience just for a short bit as we wrap up the year. You can follow me at Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, Rubino. Follow Zach at ZACBOWDEN. Follow us. I will be at CES unless the Omicron cancels everything. But as right now, we're all going, so we'll see what happens with that. But as always, have a good holiday season. And make sure you tune in to early January. We'll cover everything at CES. Take care, everyone.
Nice. So yes, last Q&A for the year. Get your questions in, and we'll try our best to answer them. You can ask about anything you like. It could be about movies. It can be about Microsoft. It can be about politics. No politics. Politics not allowed. I'm excited to be done. The year is almost over. Did you see Dave 2D's video about glossy versus anti-reflective gaming monitors? Side-by-side comparison showing better image quality with glossy, but have reflections to do with maybe why MS persists. I'm sure that's one of the reasons. I personally prefer glossy. Well, yes, Dan, because obviously Dan has the experience here. Dan knows that there are displays that are not matte, but also anti-reflective.
Anti-reflective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't see that video, but Zach's right. There's different ways of doing this. HP had one way where they put like a glass filter thing behind it, and a lot of it is just the way you do eyeglasses. When you go get eyeglasses, you can get anti-reflective layer. It's a coating that they put on. They do it for watches too. In fact, my watch has you can almost see there's like purple hue to it. Is that it doesn't reduce quality at all? It's very sharp. So there's different ways, but that's what Microsoft is supposed to do, is innovate. Oh, we don't like anti-reflective. It's not as good right now as we would like. Well, make it better. That's what you're supposed to do. But I think it's still I've used a lot of Dell's anti-reflective stuff is really, really nice. So I find that a specious argument for a lot of things. But yeah, and there's a difference between that and matte. A matte display is completely different. Matte is not as good for color accuracy, photo, or gaming. I could see that. But you usually see a true matte display reserved for budget laptops or specific business laptops. And I actually like matte displays, but that's because I'm reading all day on them or I'm doing like word processing work. A matte display is better, but you don't have to have that. Do the Surface Pro 8 and Laptop Studio support Surface Dial? Did you try it? Yeah, I'm sure they do. I don't see why they wouldn't. There's nothing really inherently. Maybe the on-screen stuff. I haven't tried the on-screen. Did you try it? No, because no one uses Surface Dial. Zach, you have a Surface Dial around, don't you?
In this room somewhere, but not in my immediate reach.
The thing is, too, also, like, with the anti-reflective for gaming, all that might be true, but, like, you're buying a Surface laptop, you're not gaming on it. I mean, you could, but that's not the point of the device. The point of the device is to work on it. So, again, that argument doesn't make sense. How about an education tablet running Core OS on ARM in 2022? No. I don't think Core OS is a thing anymore. Zach can confirm and deny that.
It's still a thing, but it's not something that it's going to ship as a consumer-grade end product.
Yeah.
It's for sort of niche products and stuff going forward, I think.
Surface headphones 2, how they sound versus any other headphones over the ear you've used. They're good. They're really good. A lot of it comes down to preference, but like the, Sony's are considered to be the MX4s or, the best, right? And then next up you'll have like the Bose QCs. Well, now they have the 45s. Although I heard mixed things about the 45s. I still have the 35.2s. And they're good, but the Bose doesn't give you a graphic equalizer or anything like that. The best thing about Surface headphones is their ease of use. There's nothing cooler than cranking the dial to put noise canceling on and adjusting noise cancellation or going to the microphones and then turn the other side for turning up or down the volume. Like, in terms of, I love using this. It's something that you really notice when you're using other headphones, what a pain it is to change the volume. You have to go find a little, is that the knob? Oh no, I just brought up the Google Assistant. It's like, but the audio quality, they're good. They're not amazing.
Your tech support at the family get-together. Are you installing Windows 11 for the family? Yes. If they ask me to install Windows, I'm installing Windows 11.
Do you ever think control panel will ever be removed? Yeah, sure. In fact, the latest dev builds moved more stuff out of control panel into settings, if I'm correct. Right, Zach?
Yep. There will be a point where there is no need for that legacy panel, and they will therefore press the delete button on it, which I'm sure that's how that works. They just press delete and it goes away.
They're getting there, but I could also see it's not like a huge priority.
I don't get why. It's absolutely. They've been chipping away at the control panel since Windows 8. So we're coming up to a decade almost. It takes time to do these things, It hasn't always been top priority for them. I'm sure they could have done it quicker if it was really a concern for them, but it hasn't been, and I don't see why it would be. But yeah, they are chipping away at it, and there will come a day where there is no need for it anymore. But who knows when that will be?
I think it was a dev channel one. They got rid of uninstalling and how to remove apps from the control panel.
Yeah, that was the last thing really was why I was still going into the control panel. Now that they've made that change, I don't think the control panel will ever open on my PC again because all of the settings
it's only when you want to go like do some really weird esoteric stuff.
Yeah,
well, I don't see your average person even touching control panel anymore.
Yeah,
I don't think it's a big deal. What would DNR garage sale look like? Yes, it's definitely full. It sucks. I should just do a garage sale. Was there any exciting updates for our beloved Duo phones? Nope. Although, let me check. I haven't checked in an hour.
They usually put out OS updates quite late on the Duo team, don't they? In the day.
Yeah.
What have your favorite? What have been your favorite or go-to devices for 2021, and what are you most looking forward to in 2022? I think my favorite of the year has been the Duo 2. I was blown away by how big of an upgrade it was over the Duo 1. And I've ever since it came out, I've just sort of been in love with it. The honeymoon phase has not ended on that product yet. And what I'm looking forward to 2022. Laptop Studio is also on. Yeah, I do like the Laptop Studio. I think the honeymoon phase is over for that product, though. I like it. Don't get me wrong, but the Surface Book design to me. I like how that looks. I hate the actual detachment of it, but I still liked how that laptop looked as a laptop. But yeah, the Laptop Studio is still the keyboard on the Laptop Studio is still like it's the most amazing keyboard ever. I love it so much. But I do wish the display was like the Books one rather than the laptops. But for 2022, the Studio 3, assuming it ships, that's probably what I'm most looking forward to, because that has been. Is that the oldest Surface product that hasn't had an update? 2018 was the last time. Yeah, it's really in need of one. I'm hoping it has a new design, or at least an updated design with thinner bezels, because that would be nice.
Yeah, I don't. For me, definitely Duo 2 as well, because I just use it all the time. Like I'm just.
Yeah,
it's just. I mean,
great.
it got me to use Tap to Pay. So it's ridiculous. Just because I love opening it and using it. I still use the Pro X a ton. That's still my thing. I like the Pro 8 a lot as well. I'm trying to think. Oh, I don't know, stuff from HP. I really like their EliteBook series still. They're doing some more stuff with EliteBook for CES, which is going to be kind of cool. The Lenovo Titanium, I thought was cool. Like, there's been basically a lot of stuff that was announced at CES. And for 2022, I don't know. There's the biggest thing with 2022 is going to be 12th gen Intel. I'm very excited about. I think it's going to make a big difference for laptops. You're going to see much better webcams, which will be nice. You're going to see longer battery life, of course. You're also going to see the continued push already to 16 by 10 and 3 by 2, which I've been pushing for ages. But the displays are getting kind of like really cool now, and there is some new display technology. Haptic trackpads are going to be a bigger thing in 20. You're going to see all the stuff I've been talking about and harping on really start to happen next year.
Why did Microsoft cancel Aruba and the Surface Hub 2X? Yeah, I don't know why. That was a Windows Core OS product, which I think is probably the main reason. Windows Core OS, they just weren't able to get into shape for an end product like that. The only platform Windows Core OS shipped on was HoloLens 2. And even then, it's not like the full Windows Core vision. It is Windows Core OS, but the shell is not C shell. It's this custom HoloLens shell that HoloLens team built for their own purposes. I don't know. But I think it was probably because Windows Core OS wasn't in a great place. Same reason why 10X was never shipped, because Windows Core OS wasn't in a great place.
Microsoft has a problem where it can't make a new OS and stick with it.
Midori, dead. Windows Core OS, dead.
Windows Phone,
dead.
10X, dead. It really is. Like, they just keep trying to. They can't quit Windows.
And you know what? They will try again. I'm almost certain of it.
Guys, I got it.
Why
don't we make a light version of Windows? We'll pull out the Win32 stuff.
Why hasn't anybody
Don't worry. People want it. They can use this emulation layer.
What do you mean it doesn't work if we pull out Win32? We'll
just
make it work.
We tried that 3 years ago. We tried that 3 years ago and it didn't work.
Yeah.
We'll just wait till the processors are powerful enough so you can run Windows 11 on a phone.
Yeah.
And you know what? I know, I just said that, and a lot of people were like, yes, do it. Even though they're wrong, because that would be a terrible experience.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, Dan and Zach. Thank you for the great year of tech coverage. Thank you for tuning in and listening to us every week. I can't imagine listening to us every week. It must be really annoying.
Someone mentioned Aura Ring. I'm wearing my Gen 3 here. Gen 3 doesn't have a lot of the new stuff. that's coming later. In fact, they're going through a little. They're a tiny company that's going through a lot of growth problems. They're fixing those problems right now.
I'm
But
surprised they've not been acquired.
yeah, they're tiny Finnish company, I
Oh,
believe.
Google's coming for them.
Yeah,
Google's
yeah,
like,
probably right. Oh God. I mean, I still love it, right? It's still my only. Obviously, I'm just wearing a watch. It's the only health tracker I wear. I do wear the Apple Watch at the gym, but it's mostly because it's a very good stopwatch slash Spotify controller. But the stuff for Aura Ring, like SpO2 sensor and better sleep tracking, and a couple other things are coming online next year, early next year. But I still swear by them. They've had some customer support problems. They invest. They're an interesting company. Like I think it's like 80% of their workforce is just technology, just making this stuff, which makes sense because it's such a crazy piece of tech. What they have very few of, I believe they have like 11 people working on like customer service. And so it takes a long time if you have a problem with them. And that's something what they're fixing now as they try to grow. But they've invested basically all their money into research, which is a really interesting approach. And I think it's paid off, but now they need to go to that next stage and actually grow. I will say, I saw for the first time Aura Ring TV commercial, which I thought was kind of interesting. Never saw
wow.
that before. So big getting there.
Thank you for the
Who has a
kind
bigger
words, Catherine.
graveyard? Who has a bigger graveyard, Microsoft or Google? It actually might be Google.
Yeah,
Only
but
because
it's not as impactful. Google just
yes,
Google kills so many small things that nobody cared about anyway. Like the thing with Microsoft kills substantial things. That's the difference.
true. That's true. Yeah, Google does have a lot of weird. That's kind of joke too. Google kills something. People are like, what was that?
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, Microsoft tends to take on sometimes bigger projects that can then just fade away, but do have like a dedicated following. Yeah, Google has abandoned a lot of chat apps. I don't know. And ironically, I don't know if Google Duo is exactly who uses that.
I disable that on my phone every time. Like disable.
Ironically, but it has dual screen support at least.
Oh, does it? That's funny.
Yeah.
The Duo app has Duo support. 10 out of 10. All right, a few more questions. Then it's probably time to head off.
Yeah, I'm getting hungry.
I'm getting tired. It's 9 p.m.
All right, I say we wrap it up.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you for tuning in, everybody. Thank you for watching us throughout the year. We'll be back on January 7th, I believe. So follow us on Twitter so we keep you updated when we go live. But until then, have a happy holiday and we'll see you in the new year.
Bye.